Hey everybody, this is Perch. And this I think what I'm about to say may become uncomfortable to some. And I think some people may jump on it like it's an indictment or it's something that they want to pile on with or not. I don't know. I feel like I'm nervous and I've started this topic about three or four times and then I give up because it's like I go, you know what, this is they're just people are going to take this the wrong way. It's just going to get people riled up. I'm just going to be this is the kind of stuff that it gets on one of those stupid clipping reaction type things where somebody's streaming my show and then doing the taking out of context reacting to it every 3 seconds and just being dickheads about it. So if you're doing that right now, then you're having to sit through this unless you carefully edit out this section of me saying you look stupid doing it, but whatever. Oh, I don't look stupid. You look stupid. Okay, fine. But I keep coming back to this idea in my head. And I touched on this a little bit with a recent video about there being a hole in comics. And the premise behind that hole that I was referencing was really all about, you had an audience or you have a comic audience, and a certain segment of that audience has lost interest to start pursuing a different product. The different product in this case that I was talking about in the video, but there's many cases, it's not just one group. But the product I was talking about in that video was people who are, they're getting their entertainment for YouTube. So let me take it from a very mathematical, scientific, unemotional perspective for a moment. You have 24 hours in a day. You're going to sleep for a percentage of that time. Presumably, you have family commitments, work, a variety of things that you're doing, so your time is basically whittled down to, I don't know, like say a half an hour or an hour to read comics in a day, and that's probably even a little generous. If the comics start to become less interesting to you, they're just not sparking your imagination, you're going to search for entertainment elsewhere. And that's going to be watching more movies or reading books or going to a bar or any number of things that is going to start to replace that comic time. The comic time isn't perceived as useful to you, so you're going to do something else. And what's happened is a segment of the audience has said, I still like comics. I still want to be kind of, in theory, part of this whole thing, but I don't like the comics themselves. The problem is the comics are dull to me. It's just not, they're not appealing. And so I'm not interested in them as much as I used to be. But I still want to be involved with comics. So what happens is that people they've gone to YouTube that talk about comics, but they aren't making comics. So you're going onto channels like this one, and you're hearing people discuss things like you used to get when you're in a comic store, but you're not actually in a comic store. And some of this was hastened by COVID and the fact that we were staying at home. We were looking for connections to our favorite hobbies when we couldn't go wandering around outside. So we started to go to YouTube to hear about comics. And YouTube, I've said this before, and it can argue with it as much as you want, but YouTube, the more cynical and negative you are, typically the easier it is to get hits, get attention. It's not true for everyone. I mean, you can certainly get a very popular comic channel just based on positivity, but your odds go down. You need to either spend a bunch of money actually producing things. There's a limited amount of those that can be done. You have to spend a lot of time with research, and the immediate payoff is not there. Or you have to be attractive and hot. That's another good approach. And me not being any of those things, I did my channel, and my channel is very bootleg, kind of college radio style. Here's what I think about comics while I'm driving around. It serves its purpose, but it is what it is. For many channels, if you say outrageous things, you can actually, you don't have to put as much money into production and all the rest, and you can be popular enough to make some money off of it. And so, the motivation was there to be that kind of channel, and the motivation of comic fans was to still be involved in this hobby, even though the comics themselves aren't as entertaining, and so they're that's how it all comes together. That's how we've gotten to where we are now. The audience that took the time away from their day, the half hour or whatever that was reading comics, and instead has put it toward YouTube, largely has found that a way more convenient way to spend their time. First of all, it's a lot cheaper, i.e., free, to do the YouTube route. If you don't like something, you can just skip away from it or miss it for the day or whatever it happens to be. You don't have to. You don't feel bad about. People don't feel bad about spending their time on things. Most cases, they do feel bad about spending their money. Well, if it's free and something turns out not to be very good, you don't go, man, I wasted an hour. Yeah, you might, but you don't feel as frustrated as if you spent $5 on something and the half an hour to read it. So it's just it became an easier thing for a segment of the audience to consume. The point that I was making in that other video, and I think is still true, is that audience has actually shifted their desires to something else. They've shifted away from going to a comic shop, putting money down, opening up the comic, getting a bag and a board, all that kind of stuff. And it's gone toward, watching or listening to something on the computer, typically while you're doing something else. Maybe playing a game, maybe you're playing Fortnite, or actually that's not as popular as it used to be. Maybe who knows what you're doing. Maybe you're driving around in a car and you're just listening to stuff. But you've moved into a multitask world where the comic part of your time is now being served via YouTube commentary, with the majority of YouTube commentary generally being negative. If you're looking at the sum of the whole of all the different channels, and if you like that, if that's stuck with you, my argument is you've taken a customer who used to buy a physical product, open it up, read it, track their favorite superheroes, and you've moved them to a completely different product. And it's going to be hard to move them back. And one thing about comics that I think is kind of hard to argue is that part of its power is in repetition, meaning you might not care about Superman on day one, but if you read 60 comics of Superman in them, you wind up caring quite a bit by day 6, by comic number 60. You also start caring about Jimmy Olsen and Crypto and all the supporting cast and whatever Perry White's up to and Morgan Starr. And you start to build more of a connection into this universe. If you sever that connection, meaning you take a break from comics for, say, 5 years, you go to YouTube where people are complaining about things. And again, I'm trying to say this in a way that's not necessarily knocking those people, because they're just trying to make money. So this isn't necessarily that's why I say some people hop on this going, yeah, Perch takes it to those toxic fans who are probably racist too. No, that's not the intent of what I'm doing here. Nor is it the intent to, trivialize that business. It is a business. But if you take people out of the habit, then you get things like, say, Riri Williams. And what's fascinating to me is there were some comments on a Riri video that I did recently where people were like, I was fascinated by two types of comments. One was, I'd completely forgotten about Riri. Is she even in comics anymore? And the answer is, she's not really. Riri rarely shows up in comics. She's not doing anything in Marvel. So a lot of people are like, this is why Marvel's gone woke, because they've replaced all these characters. Actually, no. Riri is, it is invisible. For all intents and purposes, Marvel has given up on Riri. She's not a member of the Avengers. And the other comment was people who were like, yeah, I mean, they keep putting like that comic last month where she was insulting her asking her teacher to harass her and discriminate against her. So it would give her motivation. Like that wasn't last month. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. That was like 10 years ago. Like, I don't think it was quite 10 years ago, but it was like, we're talking, I think we're talking Obama presidency. I mean, by political terms, you're talking about 300 years ago. I'm joking, but it's been a while, I guess, is my point. And I in general, I think that's the problem. When you break that habit, you get people who have lost track of what's going on. I mean, Marvel has introduced roughly 10,000 new characters between Riri and today, many of which have also been discarded and ignored. But those characters are, if you don't know they exist, do they exist? And so I guess all this is coming back to is you have an audience that left comics. To get them back into comics, it's going to be incredibly hard. I see some of you saying, well, all they need to do is Marvel just needs to come out and apologize for past sins and everybody will come back. I'm going to say I doubt that. Press D for doubt. I don't think so. Press X for doubt. I don't think they're coming back. I really don't. It's going to be very difficult. If you're going to bring people back, your best hope strategically to bring them back is you got to get them really excited about, a core character like a Captain America, a Steve Rogers Captain America, drawn by an artist they can relate to that's going to give them something new, or written by somebody classic. You can go kind of either direction. Like if you announce that Chris Claremont was coming back on the X-Men and Pepe Larraz was going to do the art, and we're going to do a 12-issue run so you could, happily invest for 1 year and commit, you'd get some of these historical fans back. But you're getting them back for one issue. You're getting them back for a thing. You're not getting them back as steady comic readers, because they've embraced a new product. In this case, YouTube. There's other things as well. Some people have embraced manga. Some people have embraced online mobile games. People have gone elsewhere. The only path forward for comics in order to regain the business numbers that they had, say, 30 years ago, and again, we can go into, how healthy some of those business numbers are. You've actually got to get new people, and you've got to build a habit. The big question that I think a lot of people have, or at least I would have, is, can you use the same approach that worked back in the 70s to get a new audience today? Meaning, okay, if the way forward is that you have to appeal to 12-year-old boys to get them into comics like you did in the 70s, that created lifelong comic fans that continue to collect in the 70s all the way through to, age 50. Do the techniques and the tactics and the approaches that you used at that time, do they still work? Can you run the same play? If you put a spinner rack in a grocery store, would you get 12-year-old boys to pick up a comic, get interested in it, and start reading? And my answer to that is no. I don't think it works. I don't think you can get them in the same place. I don't think 12-year-old boys are hanging around supermarkets. I think that has changed in society. So you're going to have to find that group somewhere else in order to market to them. They also may not, the other problem is, a 50 cent, 75 cent comic book back in the 70s was something that a kid could kind of beg their parents for and get money for a floppy, or, take aluminum cans in to be recycled and buy their own comics. You had all those options. You don't have them today. If a comic book is $5, that it's going to be very, very hard. I've worked very hard. I'm reasonably well off. I go into a comic shop and my daughter brings up something that's $5, a floppy comic, and I will buy it. But it's not in my head. I'm not just like, oh yeah, I don't just throw it on the pile. I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, $5 for this. I have that thought. I have the money to pay for it, no problem there, but it's reached a price point where it's no longer a, yeah, whatever kind of decision. And so therefore, I think the approach that worked in the 70s does not work in 2025. It just doesn't. But you still need that audience in order to survive. You reeling back the people who got frustrated with you and went to YouTube, where commentators clown on comic companies all day long. You're not that. I think that is even more of a lost cause of trying to go get those people back. I may be wrong, and again, that's no insult. That I do not mean this as an insult to that audience. They found something else they liked. They've taken it. That's not a sin. You should go where your interest and your desires lie. You shouldn't just continue. How many times on this channel I've said, continuing to just bitch about the same stupid things is a path to madness. You have to find something else you like. Well, people did. Trying to reel them back in, I just think is near, if not completely, impossible. So you've got to figure out a way to do it. Anyway, there is a hole in comics, and the strategy has to be, how do we get those people back? And at the moment, I don't see there's a lot of good things happening in comics. I think a lot of better stories are being produced. I think you've got a lot of good things happening, What you don't have is the clear strategy to actually generate the new audience that you're going to need to ultimately survive and thrive. And I've described it as a distribution problem. I don't know it's completely a distribution problem. It's a pricing problem. It's a content problem. I mean, you got to solve everything at once. But I think we, as an industry, I'm talking to people who are making comics, I think we have to wrap our heads around the idea that we have to go out there, we have to get new readers, we have to get new buyers, we have to start this habit with people. We have to be clever about how we're going to go do that. And it's not simple. And I think what worked before won't cleanly work again. By the way, it doesn't mean you can't learn anything from the past. Obviously, you should. And some of those techniques probably are definitely valuable. I do think telling classic core, stories of superheroes is a good idea. I do think some of the storytelling that they used in the 70s and 80s would absolutely work today. But you are up against a location problem, a distribution problem, a price point problem, and heavy distraction from other things problem. And so you have to have an answer for those as well. Anyway, I said that without being too controversial. I don't know. People will find a way to spin things out of anything, but I'll do my best. Anyway, let me know your thoughts and comments below, and thanks for listening.